Hey! Hi. Welcome to Tech Talk here. Thank you so much for coming here and checking us out. I'm going to switch to my main screen here and introduce my good friend, Hans-Peter Hinkel. Hey, Happe, how's it going?
Yeah, so far so good. How are you, Blake?
Not too bad.
Yeah,
Move that
cool.
out
Good
here.
evening, ladies and gents, out in the world.
Yes, here it's afternoon, 1:03 p.m. in the afternoon on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So what is our topic today? Our topic today, we're going to talk about the new features in ESP. I'll show some of that. Happe is going to show you a cool video, right? I guess we're going to do a video later on that.
Yeah.
So, and then later on, we have actually a Super Booth video to show you of the PG-ANX, right? And the PG-FMX. I think that's what we showed there.
That's it.
That we shot for you guys, so you can check out those cool, very, well, they're like concept cars. I think that's the way to look at them. They're like things that aren't for sale, but are very cool things. You'll see what that is. But yes, today we're going to talk about what's new in ESP version 3.0. So I'll go ahead and talk about that right now. So here's what's new. I made a little thing that shows what's new. And I'll show this in ESP in a second here, but I'll just go through each of these real quick. So MIDI Learn, that's a very cool thing that we've added to it. Song and pattern import, like MONTAGE Connect. Happe's going to show you that. SmartMorph, FM algorithm search, copy and exchange mute solo for elements, oscillators, the oscilloscope display, hardware and software control enhancements, and then you can choose between the performance or the DAW for the tempo, but without getting into that, how about we just take a look at each of these things right here. So let's start out here with MIDI Learn. Let me go to, this is ESP, by the way, and I'm going to turn it on here. Let's put my little switch on here. Get my DAW remote ready for when I need it. So first things first, I will search for, how about something simple like an ANX sound. And again, you see that ESP has this exact same performance category search setup that MONTAGE M has, which is really cool. Again, it's MONTAGE M in your DAW. So I'll go here, I'll grab something like the dark vintage pad, for example, and we'll see that we're working here. Let me turn this on. I'm going to turn off my local control, which I have in my DAW remote that I have selected here on MONTAGE M. So now you're just hearing ESP. So what's cool about MIDI Learn? Well, it's something that most plugins have. We added it with version 3 here, but basically if I right click on any of the parameters inside ESP and I touch Learn, it will bring up a dialog, and right now it's listening for anything I move. So let's say I move this modulation wheel here, and now I've just quickly assigned that to resonance, and see how it in the screen here, it highlights what I've done here, and then you can set a minimum and maximum value for that. So it's very cool. It's very fast to set up any sound inside of ESP for how you want to work and assign controllers for where you would like them to be. And if I want to get rid of them, I just simply go right here and hit delete, and it allows me to reset everything back to normal. So now it's not moving the resonance in there. So MIDI Learn, that's a very cool thing. Again, song pattern import, Happe is going to show you that. That's a very cool thing that we've added as well. SmartMorph. This is pretty cool, I must say, because you get a big, I have a big 32-inch monitor that I'm looking at to do this. It's very cool to have it in SmartMorph. So again, how about we go through here and I'll use my category search to find a cool SmartMorph sound in here. And there it is, SY Wave Pad. We'll go down here to SmartMorph and check it out. It's right here. So if I move, literally, let me hide this out. I can use the SmartMorph in here as well and morph through stuff as I'd like. I can also use the super knob. Right now there's only 2 waypoints. We don't want that. How about we add 6 waypoints? And then I can literally just grab these waypoints and move them where I want. It's a very cool interface. And of course, because it is a Montage M, I can transfer any sound that I've made in here into my hardware Montage M, but I can set it up all inside of ESP. So very cool. SmartMorph looks just exactly the same way as it looks. So if I wanted to add maybe another part, it's as simple as going in here, grabbing another part here, saying, okay, I like that one. Let's get rid of this one. And then I can do my SmartMorph just like that and do a new one. Again, it works just like the hardware. Very cool. All in ESP 3.0. Another thing that's cool. How about we go to another cool thing in here? Go back home. Let's find a simple FMX sound, not SmartMorph. How about we say single? Remember, everything that you see in here, if you haven't used just on your hardware Montage M, you can do this all on your Montage. So you can use the attribute search to find certain things. And right now I'm just looking for a single part FMX sound just because it's easier to see things when there's not the 8 parts inside here. And you have algorithm search. So before, you couldn't do this, but it's a very simple thing. It's just going over here. And you have our cool algorithm search where you can say, okay, here's what I want. I want to set up my carrier and modulator. So I want maybe, how about a 5? And since it's 9, I would have to go 5 and 4. And I can see different ones that are set up for modulators and carriers. So if I want to maybe do a 4 and a 5 here, or how about a 4 and 4? And you can immediately select that. So now I've changed that sound by just changing the algorithm, which can drastically change the sound. But it's very quick, easy to do that whenever I want to, experiment with FM, do some programming. You have your algorithm search just like you have in Montage M. Very cool. Another thing we have in here is copy and exchange for parts. So this is just a matter of going right-clicking on the part, and you can also do this over in the operator area as well. So if I select a part and I say here, boom, and I say copy exchange, you get the same similar dialogue that you get in fact, exactly the same that you get in Montage M. So now I can change, I can switch parts, I can add, copy part 1 to part, let's say 2, something easy here. Or I can do operator, and I can exchange copy operators or elements however I want in any of these performances in here. So very cool. Just to copy and paste, mute and solo, operators and parts, elements, and so on. Another thing we have is the oscilloscope, which when you click on it, it shows up there. It's just a nice kind of cool thing to have in there, which we've had inside the Montage M. Now we have it in ESP as well. And then there's some control enhancements as far as just things like having all of your physical controls here aligned with what's happening in ESP. And it's gotten significantly better as far as doing that kind of stuff as well. So just being able to just move a single knob here and have it work within ESP as well. The hardware and the software is much better integrated as well as in the DAW remote, which is added in ESP control, which is kind of hard to see in the screen here, but it's in the bottom right here, and you can see it in my small screen at the very bottom of the list. Track, plugin, transport, ESP control. It's right there. And then lastly, finally, you can now just switch between whether or not you want, this is really cool for things like arpeggios and stuff. If I want the performance to be synced to the tempo of the DAW, which right now we have it at 120. So if I change my DAW tempo, you can see it changing up here as well. But if I wanted to remove that from the DAW tempo and want to have the actual performance, I just simply click here and it changes it to the performance right here for what the tempo is inside the saved performance. So that's pretty much the entire what's new inside of ESP 3.0. And remember, this is a something that changes as we move forward here. So so yeah, Now I'd like to turn it over to Hape and have him show you the cool pattern and song import that is from, it happened with Montage, the original one. Now we've added to ESP, and Hape is going to show you how that works here right now. Take it away, Hape.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Great presentation. I was facing some issues with my Thunderbolt docking station, and it disconnected all the external displays and USB devices and SSDs and whatever. So I won't take the risk to present that live, and so for that case I pre-produced my part in a small video which I would like to start right now. I created this performance for today. It's a 6-part performance. It has 2 FMX parts and a few AWM2 parts. One part is using some user waveforms, and also some user arpeggios are used here. What I like to do right now is I want to use the pattern sequencer, which I can access here by pressing just the play button. It takes me directly to the first empty pattern. And I like to record a few measures with a few scenes. And scene 2 is already selected. I just wanted to record 2 measures here, so I reduce the length to 2. Then I press record, and as soon as I press play, I get the count in, and then I can start. These are my first 2 measures. Now I switch over to scene number 4. Again, 2 measures. Record, play. Scene number 4, again 2 measures. And number 6 is only 1 measure. And 7, also 1 measure. This is the break at the end. So that's all for the instrument. And now let's move over to Cubase and ESP. I created this project in Cubase containing an instrument track with the expanded soft synth plugin for MONTAGE M. And when we take a look into the data utility, you can see that it contains no user arpeggios, no user waveforms, and no performances. So this is basically the preset content. What I like to do now is like to synchronize the content from my instrument into ESP. This is a feature which already existed in version 2 of ESP, so this is nothing new. But let's do it very quick. So I go to press this synchronize icon here, and we have the option to synchronize the edit buffer, user, library, or even a backup file. In my case, I like to take the user because I prepared a pretty small user memory only containing a few performances, a few waveforms, and a few user arpeggios. And as soon as I press this arrow, receive from Montage M8X, it starts to transfer the content from the instrument into the plugin. It takes a moment, but since this is a pretty small file, it doesn't take too long. There we go. So I can close this dialog. Now, first of all, I like to select the performance I want to work with. I use this magnify glass which takes me to the category search. And here we go to the user, and there are my few user performances, and this is the one we want to work with today. So what is now new in ESP is the ability to also synchronize MIDI data from the instrument into the plugin, which means you can transfer or synchronize songs as well as recorded pattern. And this was a function that MONTAGE Connect had or used to have, and now it's added into ESP with version 3. And in order to do this, I have to press this little note icon here, and then it also takes a moment to receive the data from the instrument. There we go. So first view is on songs, but I don't have any songs on my instrument, but of course the recorded pattern. So I move over to pattern, and the first 5 pattern are the demo pattern that comes with the factory content. And when you have a lot of pattern, like 100 or whatever, you can use the date button here to sort, and then you have the most recent pattern at the top of the list. Now what I can do is I can just simply drag and drop the MIDI data from my recorded scenes. You can see I have the recorded scene number 2, 4, 5, 6 and 7. And I start with scene number 2, and I just drag it on the empty area here below the instrument track, and then I let go, and then it automatically creates the tracks as well as the parts. Right? So, and I can continue with the scene number 4 again. There we go. Scene number 5. 2 measures. 6 and 7. By the way, you can also drag this MIDI data onto your file system from your computer, and it automatically creates a MIDI file out of this data. Okay, now I can close this dialog. One thing I have to do is now I have to route the tracks to the correct output, which is the expanded soft synth plugin for MONTAGE M. There we go. I have to change this setting here from network session to the expanded soft synth. There we go. So now all tracks are going into the ESP. In order to use the performance now, let me change the window here so that it's better visible. In order to use the performance within the DAW, I have of course to change something here. First thing I have to do is I have to deactivate the arpeggio master switch. So turn this off, because I don't want to use the arpeggios within the performance, but I want to use the MIDI data in the DAW to trigger my parts. Second thing I need to do is I have to deactivate keyboard control button for all the parts, because the keyboard control button not only decides which part is under keyboard control, but it also decides that all parts that are under keyboard control are receiving on the same MIDI channel, which is the basic channel by default, channel 1, for example. And in order to trigger each track on his related channel, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I have to turn off keyboard control, like this. And now we should get to go to give it a try and play back the MIDI data and hear what it sounds like. As you can hear, it's playing back the things, but the drums are missing. Why is that? As soon as I select a drum part here, the first thing that comes up is effect and routing, and I change this to the part settings. And then you can see that we have this button here which is called ARP Play Only. This is a function mostly used for drum parts. So when you play on the instrument, for example, you have a multi-part performance with a drum part, and you only want to activate this part in combination with arpeggios so that you can play something and you don't trigger some drum notes with your playing. And of course, for this situation, for this scenario, I have to deactivate this, otherwise it doesn't play, triggered by the MIDI data that we have transferred from the instrument into ESP. Now let's play it back. There we go, all good. And yeah, I mean, now of course you can manipulate the MIDI data, you can rearrange everything really easy, and that's a really cool feature that has been added now to ESP. And for example, when you need more, I mean, this performance has 6 parts, 6 active parts. And as Blake already mentioned, part 9 to 16 in ESP are used for SmartMorph, not to trigger them from the DAW via MIDI. And when you need more than 8 parts, you can easily create a second instrument track and then use part 1 to 8 again for another 8 parts or even more, depending on how big your project is. Yeah, I hope you liked it and you learned something new, and thanks. Yeah, thanks for your understanding, gents. And that was it from my side. Now back to Blake.
Awesome. Well done. Very cool. You know, something else that I've had 1 or 2 people comment that if I had a 16-part sequence in MONTAGE M, and I want all of those parts, how do I realize that all with ESP? I think something that people might forget, and sometimes I forget, is that, well, let's say you want to use the MONTAGE Connect, like the old MONTAGE Connect, where we didn't have a plug-in, and you wanted those 16 parts, and you had those. You could move them over back and forth with just the MONTAGE M, all 16 parts, and play the performance internally inside the Montage. That functionality still exists with this ESP. Does it not? It does, right? So I look at this as being, you know, there's some very serious advantages with having ESP. And if you needed to have all 16 parts in ESP, well, you'd have to create 8 additional instrument tracks in addition to the 8. Because, again, ESP, the only time that parts 9 through 16 are being used are with SmartMorph in ESP. Those other parts, it's an 8. It's the performance, the first 8 parts that is playable all the time. And it's part of the reason, you know, there's also no seamless sound switching in ESP. There is in MONTAGE M, but it's part of just some of the differences between the two. There's some slight differences. But again, if someone were to say, you know, I think the biggest example is someone that has a general MIDI file that they find. And there is sort of a, you know, it calls the sounds correctly. It's not a general MIDI compatible insofar as how all of the things necessary to be GM compatible, but you can still play MIDI files, and they will play in MONTAGE M. And if you had a 16-track MIDI file and you wanted to move that over using this new pattern song import in ESP, you can still do that, and you can still use the MONTAGE M as the playback. But you can now add other things to it as well. You can add ESP, or you can create different instrument tracks. I remember I've seen this in the forums on Yamaha Synth, and had some people talk to me about this. I just wanted to add that in there as one of the differences. But excellent. That was awesome, though. And it's a very cool thing to have this capability in ESP now. Because the first thing I played there, I did everything in MONTAGE M. I just used the pattern sequencer and used the play effects and did it that way. And now that I'm ready, now I can move those over to ESP, or from MONTAGE M into ESP with this performance I used. it's cool. It's great. It's such a nice thing to add in there.
And it's especially a great feature when you want to import things that are arpeggio based.
Absolutely.
That's the reason why I took this, or I put together this performance with all arpeggio parts, because arpeggio recording is always a mess. You have to synchronize the instrument to the project, and then you have to maybe requantize things and back and forth, and it's a mess. So recording on the pattern sequencer is just easy, as I showed, and then just transfer it over to Cubase, and you don't have to think about synchronization and stuff like that.
Exactly. That's such. In fact, that's the only way that I do it. I hear how do you record a arpeggio in the DAW, and that explanation and how that works, and people not understanding that. You realize when you play the chord, you're not playing all the other notes that the arpeggio is generating. It's going through something to do that, right? So it's so much easier to use the pattern sequencer is what I always tell people, and then just transfer it over. This is really designed perfectly to do that and to get exactly what you want out of it. All the notes that you wanted.
And it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but I'm so glad you showed that one thing. I've had to talk to somebody about that too. Why is the art not playing though? Art play only's on. Little things like that.
Yeah.
But
the small things.
Really well done. That was awesome. So I think, the last thing that I was going to do is maybe have just a little bit more of a discussion, and maybe we can both be in here for that. That just talks about, as a refresher on how this instrument connects. So the DAW and ESP MIDI connections in here. So first of all, MONTAGE M is a USB 2.0 level 4-port interface. So what do those ports do? Well, port 1 is communication between MONTAGE M and the hardware tone generator itself. So it's just your normal connection that you would do via a single MIDI cable if you used it that way. It is communication for the hardware tone generator only. That's what that's for. USB MIDI port 2, that's set up for DAW remote communication. So you can set up your remote control there and then tell your DAW, whichever one you're using, to look to USB port 2. And then I usually just set up to the standard Mackie control protocol. Works great. Works awesome. You can do all your mixing with the MONTAGE M hardware. Port 3 is a cool one. This is, let's say I have something like a cool FS1R. That was our, I guess that was from the early aughts is when we released that, maybe late 90s. It was the cool FM tone generator that we had that had some really cool formant shaping sounds, really interesting thing. But that's a MIDI 1.0 thing, right? I want to bring that into my montage. What you can do is you can take the MIDI output from the physical DIN 5-pin on the montage and connect that to any tone generator like that FS1R, and then inside Cubase I can say port 3, and that's going to send anything that I play back via MIDI out port 3 to just that tone generator. So you can bring in older gear into your montage USB system by using port 3. Inside, you set that inside the DAW as USB port 3, and then you connect something to the physical MIDI ports on MONTAGE M. Very cool thing. And then finally, USB port 4, that absolutely, which I didn't put a 4 in there, but USB port 4 is for ESP communication completely, 100%. So that's how the ports work in this system. The other thing that we wanted to bring up here is there are a few things. Now realize that MONTAGE M is our first product. I believe it is our very first product that is moving towards this MIDI 2.0 compatibility. It is MIDI 2.0 compatible. But as that develops and gets more acceptance in different OSs like computer OSs and so on, and other manufacturers, it's going to be realized it's going to be a very cool thing. We're still kind of getting there. But while we're doing that, there were a few things that they added when we were developing MONTAGE M, and there's these driver modes, and people kind of get a little confused between these two, and I'm going to try to add a little bit of clarity to what they are. First of all, Generic is the one that's how I'm connecting to Montage all the time. My system, my USB driver mode, and you find that in settings. In fact, I'll show you where it is here. It's in settings, right? Advanced, and then right here is USB driver mode, generic or vendor, right? Mine's on generic. What does generic offer you? Well, generic is a class compliant driver. I have a MacBook Air that I did not install the Yamaha Steinberg driver on, and it finds my Montage ports because, again, it's a class compliant driver. Now, there are reasons why you might want to use the Yamaha Steinberg USB driver, and I do have it in the system here, because I have other Steinberg gear, and there's things that maybe go beyond class compliance that I need to have that connection where I use that driver. For example, what you're listening to me on is an AG08, which is our really cool streaming mixer that has cool stuff like, hey, how's that? Fun stuff. But there's other functionality in that where that does require that driver. So, but as far as class compliant goes, that means that it's built into the system. It is a plug and play system. And Montage with a Macintosh computer, absolutely, with the current version, is class compliant. Now, there's other things in here too. When you open up your DAW, sometimes you'll get, and it depends on whether or not your computer is fast enough to handle the high precision driver, but you have two choices, Montage M and Montage M High Precision. And people ask, so do I choose high precision? What's the difference between the two? Well, what the difference really truly is Montage M, just Montage M, not high precision, is less CPU intensive and has a little bit more forgiving gain staging, and this is because it is a 32-bit or 24-bit float. That's the audio that is used when you connect just Montage M, is 32-bit or 24-bit float as opposed to fixed integer. By all means, there are tons and tons and tons of videos that you can find from really cool sources on YouTube to look into what the difference is between floating point and integer. But basically, one of them has much more higher dynamic range than the other, and the other one, which is high precision, which is 32-bit fixed, has a lower dynamic range, and you really have to have a lot more careful gain staging, because when you clip and when you want to go and edit things in post-production, it's a lot more room for error in that, and it also requires a lot more CPU usage. So why would I? And some people believe that one might sound better than the other. At a certain point in this digital audio world, I would say use your ears. I cannot hear a single bit of difference between the two. All I know is that I like the Montage M, the lower CPU intensive. As far as hit on my system, it's much easier. So there you go. That's the generic side. The vendor side, okay, that's not class compliant. That absolutely requires the Yamaha Steinberg USB driver. And really, we're moving towards a world where things are going to be more and more class compliant. So I would almost say that the vendor driver is something, if you have different versions of Windows, older version of Windows, where you're having issues connecting things, use the Yamaha Steinberg USB driver, first of all, for whatever system you have in that world. And you will also get with that driver, when you're using it in the vendor world, right? We're talking about that. It ensures a little bit higher quality audio for sure. And it's for people that when they try to use the other driver, it just won't connect. But for the most part, the generic driver works perfectly on modern systems, especially Macintosh computers like what I'm using here. But those are the two big differences between the two. We recommend definitely generic for the vast majority of cases for what you use when you connect Montage M to your DAW. Lastly, there is one other switch in here, and I'll go back to my overhead, which is right here, and that's legacy mode. I just turned it on, and you see what it just says there? MIDI 2.0 is disabled in legacy mode. So if you have legacy mode on, and I do not want to have legacy mode because I am using MIDI 2.0, there might be some circumstances where you need to have that. Specifically with older systems, you might need that. So you can turn on legacy mode with vendor and have kind of this MIDI 1.0 experience using the Yamaha Steinberg driver, still getting a lot of the feature benefits, but you're just not accessing that MIDI 2.0 stuff. So that's the main difference in here as far as how these things connect. Now, what I would like to do, by the way, and I'll talk about this in the resource, if you want to continue this discussion, ask some questions, go to the forums at yamahasynth.com and post up there. Like to hear from you. And there's that. Now, one thing I want to do here is introduce this next little bit. So when we were at Super Booth, we shot lots of videos. If you go to Yamaha Synth, you see a lot of videos that I posted up. There's some great ones, Bell Chen's performance and Mike Patrick's performance. I don't know what else I put up there, but I still have a lot more to go because we did a lot of really cool video shooting there. But one of the things that we got to do, Hoppe and I think it was at the end of the day, we got to show the PG controllers, and without even talking more about it, I'll just introduce the video. So here's a video that Hoppe and I shot at Super Booth 25 showing these really cool controller hardware things for Montage M. Check it out.
Hi, hey, this is Blake Angels here at Super Booth 2025. And if you ever watch our Tech Talk, here I am in the flesh with my good friend, Hans-Peter Hakel. Hoppe, right here. We rarely get to see each other. So
Finally together after all these crazy years.
After 2019 was the last time I was here. So it's great to be back here in Berlin and seeing, of course,
So
just,
cool.
you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we really are friends. So, you know, this is the 50th anniversary of Yamaha synthesizers. 2024 was, this is 2025, but we're still celebrating 50 years of Yamaha synthesizers. And part of that celebration is our engineers at Yamaha Japan created these two concept things that show what's going on inside the Montage system. So think of them as like concept cars, like when you see the concept cars that are on, you know, Mercedes or whatever, you see them and they're really cool.
And you can't buy them.
You can't buy them, and you probably never will buy them.
No.
So think of it like that. These are not for sale. There's something our engineers put together. So I guess the first one we can show here is the PG FMX. This is what an FM single part in Montage M would look like if it were hardware.
Yeah. And, you know, I've been asked a lot of, from a lot of customers, oh, do you start building modular? No, it's not a modular system, even though it looks like, right? It reminds us to the old days of synthesizers where we had walls of knobs to control a single sound. And yeah, with this controller, the PG FMX, we are controlling the FM engine. And just a really brief overview. For example, we can change the algorithm here, and you see in the display, you can see the operators changing with the algorithm. Then we have, for each of the operators, we have one of these panels. You can turn operators on and off. We have all the frequency settings here for each operator. We have the modulation settings for the operator, and of course the envelope. When I was having my first DX7, you had to, when you edit in the envelope, you had to go yes.
I had this
to go
with membrane switches.
From 67 to 69, right?
Yep.
And now you can just turn a knob and say, okay, this is a decay. I mean, in the real world, it's level and rate. In the real FM world, it's level and rate. Then we have the level scaling, which decides the amount of volume across the keyboard. And maybe that's it basically. So
well, the cool, you know, you also have the cool things that make FMX sort of cool. The different, you know, all you know, sine wave, and then all frequencies, all 1 and 2 odd and resonant frequencies, and then the skirt and the resonance. That kind of really, you know, that's where you get really the complex brass and things like that that Montage M can deliver.
Basically, that's the addition to FM, the X.
Well, and then the filter, of course. You also have a resonant filter that the original DX7 didn't have any resonant filters. It was all done with operators, but now you also have this. But that's what the single part.
That's a filter and the envelope per part, per FMX part. And of course, we have up to 16 parts, 8 under keyboard control. And And you can even decide which part you want to edit with using
Oh,
this
right
button,
there with the
right?
little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. But now we want to move over
Yeah. Let's
to
move over to the PG-ANX.
yeah. The PG-ANX is also, I mean, it's a different form factor, of
Yep.
course, because we have 3 oscillators and a noise. And yeah, here it starts again with the ability to set the part, which part we want to edit. Here's a display. And for example, when we change the waveform like this, we can tap this knob here, and then it changes the waveform and it shows it in the display. And I like to start maybe, or let's start with a ANX init patch, which we already loaded here. And yeah, so that's just an initial patch.
Okay, there we go.
So now I introduce the oscillator number 2. These are the levels, so the mixer between the oscillators.
So currently only one oscillator.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
just
here we go.
one oscillator. And now I introduce the second one. But
Look at that second one come in.
But since this is also a sawtooth waveform, you don't hear that much. So let me change the pitch first, and then let me change also the waveform to square like this.
You can definitely hear the difference in the.
Now let's change the envelope so that it's more a kind of comp sound.
Yep.
So reduce the sustain. Now it's a decay if you want to play.
Uh,
Give it a bit of-
yeah, that's a short.
Yeah, cool. And now we can use oscillator 3, for example, to give it a little bit more of grip. So I bring the volume all the way up, and then I use the sync pitch envelope. Yeah, just go with a real short decay. Really.
Oh yeah, definitely that.
Oh, it has the punch.
Yeah, they definitely did. Yeah.
And then, for example, for the oscillator, sorry, not operator, but oscillator 2, we can introduce some pulse width modulation. So just go ahead and play a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And to add a little bit of cream to it, we can switch on unison, for example, and make it a little bit bright.
Yeah, that really opens it up, doesn't it? Yeah.
And we don't use any effect. So
Yeah, so we
far,
have no
we have
effects
2 insert
so far.
effects per
Yeah.
part, so this is just unison, and it sounds amazing already,
It
right?
totally does. Yeah, I love how that's one thing. You know, it's not doing it in the screen. I mean, it's pretty cool. The interface itself is quite easy to get around, fortunately,
Yeah.
because you have the navigation button to get to it. But to see it all in front of you, it really.
We have all the knobs
and then-
here, the knobs
yeah,
there.
yeah.
I mean, it's even easier than it used to be before, but
Right.
of course, this is way more comfortable, and
Yeah.
of course, it's an eye catcher. Yeah.
Yeah, boy, I remember walking in here when we just
Yeah.
started the booth, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Those really
Amazing.
look, because all we'd seen is pictures before, and then seeing it, and it's quite heavy, isn't it?
It is.
Wooden, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It was shipped in a big wooden box.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's it for a brief
Cool.
overview, right?
Yeah, so there you go. Cool concepts that show you what is actually inside a Montage M. That's the PG ANX and the PG FMX, part of our celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Yamaha synthesizers here at Super Booth 25. Once again,
Thanks, Blake.
yeah, thank you, Javi.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have a good
See
one.
you next time.
Yeah.
While we're doing Tech Talk.
Yeah, we're doing, this is a Tech Talk video,
Yeah.
so cool.
That was a Tech Talk video, right? You know,
Definitely.
that was after a day, so I can hear my voice going away and pretty tired actually. You know what? I feel good because I know I've lost weight because I. Anyway, that was awesome. You know, something that is really interesting to me is that's just one. Well, I guess two parts, but the fact that you have multiple parts of that, when you think about if they made it for 8 parts, for example, it would be a giant, you know, they're all the same, but a single FM part is one of those, is represented in hardware. It's a interesting visual to see it. And the fact that they worked is really, really a cool thing. Plus that was so fun.
And these are just the engine parameters. So there's nothing like the motion control assignment, and there are not the effects and whatever.
Yep.
I mean, if this would
I
be
mean,
really
the effects
wide.
alone are just astonishing. So, I mean, the effects make so much. You can do so much with them, and all the control. Yeah, again, motion control, SmartMorph, all the things that you can do in the hardware. That's just is a bit. You know,
And then, as Kirk just mentioned, AWM2 for 128 up to 128 elements.
yeah, that right there is just such a big difference between this and the original Montage in that regard. The single part sounds that have 58 elements on them and things. It's such a great instrument. It really is. Every day I play it. So, well, thank you. That was awesome. Well, I guess I'll do the resources here real quick. Just to in this here Tech Talk. Yamaha Synth, that's our site for all things Yamaha synthesizers. Again, I've been posting lots of stuff that we did at Superbooth up on YamahaSynth.com. There's also a forum up there that you can join, and you can participate in asking questions, learning about stuff. There's tons of content up there. Again, YamahaSynth.com. All of the links are in the description of this video. IdeaScale is our site. I go once a week with the person in our content research and development. We go through all of the IdeaScale posts, every single one of them once a week. Trust me, the ones that are in there that are actionable, we absolutely put into a queue that our engineers look at. So if you have any idea for a Yamaha synth or a feature that you'd like us to consider, please join the community at IdeaScale. Soundmondo is our social sound sharing site where you can upload and download sounds for virtually all of our Yamaha synthesizers, from Reface to MODX, Montage, Montage M, YC, CK. You can use Soundmondo for that. It's used the Chrome browser to get onto it. It uses MIDI, web MIDI, so you can just connect right to it. You'll have to set up an account there, but that's no problem. To get into Soundmondo, have access to thousands of free sounds. And then finally, the music production guide, a wonderful guide that Hape puts together that I was looking at just today to look at some of the stuff that was in ESP. It's such a great guide. Again, you can have access to, I think, over a decade of music production guides going back. So if you have an older Yamaha synth, there's some cool stuff in there for example, the Motif XF, if you want to check that out. Again, all of the links are in the description of this live stream video here. So there you have it. That's the show for today. Thank you so much for coming to Tech Talk. Bring Hape. It was great to see you once again, as always.
Of course.
And our next Tech Talk will be in September, and it will be something cool.
Yeah.
That's all I can say right now. But think
Looking forward.
middle September, I think, is when we'll be doing that later on. But that will be wonderful. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Tech Talk, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, Hape.
Yeah, thank you, Blake, and thanks for all our participants, all our guests
Thank you so much
for joining in.
Yeah. Have a good one. And
Yeah, bye-bye.
bye.
Cheers.